It's a beautiful duck. Yes, it really is. It's but you see, uh, what? It's smiling at me. Yeah, yes, it's nice.
That Christmas would live in our memories as the Christmas when we were introduced to Chinese turkey. All was right with the
Welcome, everybody, to the Beyond the Bay Live. I'm Larry. I'm your host moderator today. And this show is brought to you by the Bay Community Theater, a nonprofit organization in Suttons Bay, Michigan, that runs and operates the Bay Theater. So we welcome you all here tonight. And tonight, the movie we're going to see tonight is going to be is A Christmas Story. Hopefully a lot of you have already seen this movie, and you've also watched the introduction by Kevin about this. And I appreciate it very much if you participate in this whole event itself. One of the things that you can do for this today is that you can comment. There'll be comments on the side and on the bottom. You can chat with other people. Just come and post in there. It's a public chat. So you can say hello to everybody and say hi. And you can also post questions. And what we're going to do is follow up and read through the comments and read the questions. And we will post questions up here as we see them. And thank you, Amy. We like these holiday sweaters as well. Thank you. I'm trying to dress like the old man. That's probably the best title for me right now, the old man. Anyways, thank you very much for being here today. We have 3 panelists joining us today. First off, we have Kevin Maher. Kevin is a film industry professional. He's worked for 20th Century Fox, Disney, Warner Brothers, among others. He's currently running the top10filmlist.com website and blog. And he's also a programming team member here at the Bay Community Theater. So thank you very much, Kevin, for being here. And thank you very much for helping us out. Next is Ted Kroll. Ted Kroll is a film historian. He taught classes at Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut. He also started a movie theater that is still existing today and operating. He retired up here, and he's also now part of the Bay Community programming team. Thank you very much for sharing your time with us today, Ted. Thank you. Next is Rita Wessels. Rita Wessels is a lifelong film fan. She started her film interest back when she was a kid watching black and white TV and the old movies. And then in high school, her first job ever was working in a movie theater. She stayed in that job, working part-time throughout college, and that helped her to get through college, and that helped develop her interest. To continue her love for the movies, she's joined and participates in our Bay Community Theater programming team. So thank you very much, Rita, and thank everybody for being here today. To get started, then we have our 3 panelists. And again, I just want to let you know is that you can go in and you can actually join the discussion by adding questions in the comment area, which will either be on the bottom, or it's going to be maybe on the right or the left, whatever way my finger is pointing. So it'll be on the sides, and you'll see the comments that people are saying, and people can come out, comment. And what we normally have is people chat with each other during the movie. And we also select questions from there. And so post your questions there. We really appreciate that very much. But to get started, kind of a warm-up, we always start with one warm-up question. That is, the basic question is, why will this film remain a part of, or be a significant part of film history? Kevin, you want to lead us off on that one?
Sure. Well, I mean, this year we've done quite a wide variety of films, some of which can be called all-time greats and sort of examples of different genres or styles or things like that. But where A Christmas Story is concerned, it's just a wonderful film. It's pure nostalgia filtered through the eyes of a child, that has all of the asides and all of the sort of the roundabout ways that a child views things, but it's like sort of hyper stylized authenticity that really makes it a pleasure, and why it is so pervasive in the Christmas season for such a small movie. I think it's one of the rare films that actually you can point to as generating a genre or subgenre in and of itself, of sort of the unsentimental Christmas movie. And I think we can talk about some of what that means later. But I think it's just it's a pure joy to watch, and I think that's what movies should be all about. Sometimes we forget that when we talk about the art side of film, that it really is the pure joy of movies that keeps driving it back. And I think A Christmas Story is a perfect example of a joyful film.
Well, thank you, Kevin. Yes, a joyful film. Ted, what are your thoughts why this will remain a significant part of film history?
I agree with that. The film is it's just kind of jokey and all that. And why is it remembered? If growing up on the East Coast, there was a radio station that came out of New York and had Gene Shepard would give these long monologues. The guy who wrote this movie, and it was his idea, his background for this movie, and he's the one as the narrator in the movie. And so that's part of it too, is this narration that goes through, which kind of talks against what's going on the screen. An older guy talking about being a little kid, which is kind of neat. When I was watching it last night, it struck me that it had something to about it that's like with the French New Wave, which is all kinds of movie jokes are done through it, and it's very breezy, and there's all different kinds of styles thrown in. There's flashbacks, and there's dreams, and there's and running jokes through the whole thing, and they break the fourth wall. With at one point he just he gives us a wink, and all this kind of stuff. And another part to it too is that Ralphie, that's his name, right? Ralph. He's pre-adolescent, and so he's in that wonderful time before sex comes in. And so even though he's got a kind of a crush on his teacher, things just don't get complicated that way. Life is just kind of bright. He knows that Santa Claus is probably a fake, but he's not going to, like he says, he's not going to take any chances, and I can remember that. And then for people my age, it's incredibly nostalgic of many things that I grew up with, like the trains in the window, the going down to the department store. In fact, even just having a department store now is nostalgia. But going and see the Christmas windows and all that kind of stuff just makes it cool. And when I first saw it, it just was so funny. I mean, it's just a very funny movie, and it's not at anybody's expense, it's great. And whoever came up with a leg lamp like that, I don't know where on earth that came from, but it's just brilliant.
It is. Well, Rita, what do you think why this will remain a significant part of film history?
Well, I think it has earned its place there. I know that for me, the first time I saw it, I didn't like it very much, and it's taken me a while to view it over and over again. And maybe because now I am also more mature, I appreciate the look back and appreciate those little moments. And like Ted and Kevin said, it's capturing those real moments from real families that many people can relate to, and putting it together in this Christmas story that makes it, I think, will keep it going for a long, long time in its appreciation, even in future generations.
All right. Well, it looks like we've got some people. We've got only one person. Please, everybody, if you wanted to chat, leave to chat with each other. Also to leave questions for us, because we'd like to answer questions that you ask. Otherwise, we will run through some prepared questions. But otherwise, please go out there and look on the chat area and discuss. But we do have a question. First question to ask is, it's a very simple question, but also can be very complex. What makes this film work? What makes this film work? Kevin, let's have you start with that.
I think what makes it work is the language. I think Gene Shepard is a master at capturing how people talk and how they talk nonchalantly, and how he remembers the very specific way that kids talk in particular. One of my favorite scenes is the tongue on the pole, and that evolves out of the walk to school, where they've clearly talked about it before. One kid has to go get verification from his father because, as everyone knows, at this time in America, the father's word was gospel. But then they go to the pole, and it becomes, even Ralphie calls it out, first the double dog dare, then the triple dog dare. And it's that element of, especially being a pre-adolescent boy, where you know that what you're being pushed to do by your friends is wrong and potentially dangerous. But how many among us have not been pushed that way by our friends to do something stupid? And you can always say there, but by the grace of God go I. But while I did not lick a telephone pole, or a flagpole, there are many stupid things that I did very similar to this. And I think that Gene Shepard captures that throughout this whole movie. You talk about the lamp leg, the leg lamp, and my favorite line in the entire movie is, as he's reflecting back, saying that it was electric sex glowing in his window. That's how Ralphie describes the leg. And that bit of language is what makes the film great and what makes it work, and why it succeeds generationally. Multiple generations get it, because it may not be the same triple dog dare now, but kids are daring each other to do stuff the same way. And I think that's the genius of the movie. So.
Okay. About Rita, why don't you go next on this one?
Sure.
So
I like Kevin's approach to it about the language, and how the language of the characters is very casual but authentic, and it's how kids talk, it's how parents talk with kids. But I also appreciated how in the recollections in the narration that older Ralphie gives us, actually Gene Shepard himself, is they're so eloquent, and the language he uses to describe his own imagination of what he saw is so flowery, with great adjectives and verbs, and he's always the best person out there. And I think balancing those two aspects of the language in the film make it really delightful as you're listening to the whole story unfold.
Right, thank you. And also, Amy out there, you saw mention something very similar to that, Rita. And Ted, what about you? Why do you think this film? How does this work?
It doesn't try to sell you anything, and it's also a Christmas story that has very, very little religious thing in it. I mean, usually you have a Christmas movie, and at the very end is some either they go off to church, or like in It's a Wonderful Life, the angels and all that stuff. This doesn't do that. They ended up in a Chinese restaurant, for goodness sake, and kind of fractured carols and that kind of thing. And it just and there's no judgments made. I mean, you got this father who's kind of aloof and is always reading the newspaper, but he's a very lovable character, and the mother's very ditzy, and you got the crazy little brother, the nutsy little brother, and but none of them are judged, and that's. I mean, there's that scene where he fights the kid, the bully, but it shows that the bully's just a coward underneath it all, and he really does go berserk. That's kind of an interesting point in the movie. But why it works, I think, is it's just so unpretentious, and it just moves along, and it does. It doesn's really stay on one thing, and it doesn't try to sell you anything. It's just humorous stuff,
Well, as Carl's saying here, Carl Austenbrook. Hi, Carl. I know Carl. Every experience in the movie is relatable to someone. That is always timeless. And I think it's the humanness of the movie. It is all the touches that are put inside there, the relationship between each character, and how not only they act, but like Rita and everybody, you guys have been saying, how well it's been written and how well it's put together as the characters act. I mean, when you have the mother and her looks and how they talk about the mother at different points and how she works and acts, and Ralphie and Old Man and even Randy. Okay, so it's a matter of every kid. It's also relatable to everybody, and it's somebody can relate to almost everything in the movie, and I think that's kind of what makes it the humanness of the movie that get people to really keep on this thing and keep talking about it. There's another question here that I think to ask about is that somebody asked real quick related to this one. This is from Lisa. This movie is based on the memories of baby boomers. Do you think it will survive the next generation?
I think it's universal. I think it applies to anyone. I showed it last Christmas when we could all get together to about I don't know, probably 40 people, aging from probably 60 down to 14 or 15. And everybody had seen it before, and everybody was willing to watch it again. And I think that's the true test of it being multi-generational, is when you can get younger kids to watch anything other than a superhero movie or Harry Potter multiple times means you have something special. And I think this certainly applies. Like I said, it is universal. Someone even mentioned in the comments, it's there's something in it for everybody that everyone's experienced.
Rita or Ted, any further on that?
Well, it's also a good. I mean, it's a well-made movie. Like I say, it has all these different little jokey things in it, and you know, it even it looks back to the silent era. You know, with those crooks coming over the fence and running down the road and all that kind of stuff. And you know, just the idea of that little boy in this summer suit. He can't get up. I can't get up. I mean, it's just very humorous, you know. And I keep saying it's very unpretentious. So to keep just throwing this stuff at you, and it's just hilarious. And then the dog go in the kitchen and tear up the turkey. I mean, what a thing, you know.
Yeah, it's got a lot of pieces to it. Rita, any further comments on this one?
Well, I agree, and I think the little moments there, and I'm sure we'll talk about them more as we go on. There are small moments that everyone can relate to. The kid in the snowsuit. I mean, all of us who have grown up in the northern climate, and as long as it will still be cold in the northern climates, little kids are going to be stuffed into a snowsuit, and at some point they're going to fall down and be stuck. It's just the way it is. And so I think all of us, especially in the colder climates, can definitely relate to that feeling. And even though it's, like Ted said, it's just a little shtick that goes on, it's something we can identify with. And I think those moments multiplied over the entire length of the film is what makes it appealing for a broad audience.
And it goes over the top. I mean, to get the kid to eat, how does a pig eat? And he really enjoys flopping it, and the mother really loves doing it. It's just so.
Well, that the piggy scene is something that's one of those human moments that we probably have all witnessed, that either as a child on yourself or other members of your family, and how mom there is just like being so happy and everything else, and dad and Ralphie are just like, oh my God. Okay. But I mean, it is a tender moment actually there, and that's caught and captured, that a lot of people can relate to even today. I can remember, not with my kids, but some other kids, that families I had, and that was just are difficult eaters. And it was just one of those things. And how do you get the kid to eat something?
Well, and today he would have been given some sort of syndrome, or he would have been in a special education class or something like this. And in this movie, he's just treated like just a weird little kid, you know. That's just the way he is, and it's great, you know. And he's hiding underneath the kitchen, under the sink there, because his dad's going to kill Ralphie. He's a great little character.
Well, I think that's why when I let off, I said this.
And to get that performance out, I'm sorry,
yeah.
Kevin, I interrupted.
No, I was just going to say that it's not a sentimental movie, but there are sentimental moments that capture the nuances of a family dynamic. I think of the scene when Ralphie and his dad are changing the tire before Oh Fudge, but it's the thrill that Ralphie got to be asked to help his dad. And I think everybody can remember that when you're a kid, when you get to help your mom or dad do something that's important or perceived to be important. And that thrill that Ralphie had is genuine to him. And I think that's the movie captured that. And of course, then to Ted's point, then it goes sideways, right? And the nuts go flying, and he drops an F-bomb in his parents' presence, which I think is another thing. At least I can certainly remember the first F-bomb I dropped in one of my parents' presence.
Oh,
To
really?
this day, I remember where I was standing and what the reaction was, and was not a good thing. But I think that's the genuineness of the film, coupled with those, that unsentimental presentation of it. That's the.
And I just remember, but I'm older than I know you are, Kevin, but not as old as Ted. But I do remember going out and my mom saying, "Help your dad." You can go help your dad. I actually remember this, and it became a routine though. But he'd give me the hubcap. He'd take off, and you had to guard those and hold on to them, make sure nothing happened to them. And that's how you learned how that all worked. Because at those days, you had a lot of flats. Okay, because tires weren't like today where they last forever. But you had a lot of flats. But that was a very good moment. And also like how the father's saying, "Time me 4 minutes." Okay.
Right. Now
I kind of like that. I'm already like that. I said, this is going to take so much time. I'm going to get this done.
Yeah, and I'm young enough as a father that my kids would tell you that's my dad, because I would do something like that. Just time me. I can, not a change in a tire, but something. Watch this, you guys. So it's just genuine. That's the genius of it.
Oh, good. That's a good introduction. I like this when we were able to keep talking about the same topic and continue on. But there hasn't been a question posted other than one we had just recently. So let's go on with another question here. What grade is Ralphie in school? Is Ralphie in love with his teacher? Rita.
Sure,
Rita, I'm going to give this one to you. And you know.
So right. So I'm a retired elementary school teacher, though. That's why I get this question. I think he's probably in 4th grade, just based on what's in the classroom and the things that they're doing and how they're behaving. And is he in love with his teacher? It's hard to tell. I think the moment that hints at it the strongest is when he's dropping off the fruit basket for the Christmas present. That picture's kind of in the middle on the left. And he just stands there smiling at his teacher and smiling. And she offers, "You can take your seat, Ralphie." And he just keeps smiling at her and beaming. And he's so proud of his gift. And he knows his essay is going to be fantastic. So I think maybe he does have a little crush on her. Yes.
Any of the guys want to respond to this?
I agree. Well, but he's also trying to be the sly character too, trying to put one over on her, with the like the pineapple. I mean, the fruit basket that just came out of nowhere, and then it just dropped, But that was trying to impress her, So just trying to get the A+,
Well, I think
he's always doing that with his mother too. He's always trying to get one over on his mother, especially at the end when he breaks his glasses and all that stuff.
And the mother, it's interesting how they depict the teacher in many different roles, like the lower side corner of there, the picture where the teacher is the witch and the mom's a jester, going that you're going to shoot your eye out, you're going to shoot your eye out. So the teacher plays an almost significant role, like you point out, is similar to the mother in this case. So it's his first relationship probably with somebody outside of his mother.
Well, I bet somewhere that there's a dissertation, because film students are able to write dissertations on the impact that The Wizard of Oz actually has in this film, because it keeps winding its way into different things. And I have no reason why, and there is probably no reason why. But, as the Wicked Witch, the teacher in the department store, they prance through there. They're in the parking lot beating up Mickey, which isn't such a bad thing. But they're, it just weaves its way through. It's an odd allusion to something else.
I kind of think it's basically because if it's based in the 40s, Wizard of Oz came out in 39. So as we got into the 40s, there could still be characters that in parades and everything else. But to come back and always reference it, that was a real, even to this day, it's still a very popular movie. And I think it also has some relationship to dreams and memories and to kids and their fears and everything else. So I see it that I think it's a good pick for this movie because probably Gene Shepard, I don't know, I haven't read the book, but he probably referenced is the Wizard of Oz at some point.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, let's go on to another question. We haven't gotten one yet from another. Please look in the bottom and chat and or type a question if you want to have something else asked. Otherwise, we'll continue on here. Next question. The house in the film is a museum today where people can tour or stay overnight. Now, I've heard it takes like $3,000 if you want to stay there on Christmas Eve. Were the scenes shot inside the house or on a set? That's a question I haven't heard. Kevin?
100% location shooting. So they shot in Cleveland, where the house is for the most of the exteriors, and then the interiors, like the school, the department store, those were all in Toronto. And actually, you mentioned the house being a museum and sort of bed and breakfasty thing. I looked on Airbnb, and you can actually stay at the house across the street for as low as $89 a night. So if you just want to look at the exterior, you can really get a bargain by staying at the refurbished house across the street from the house that was in the movie. So, so you go. But it was all shot interior in the house itself.
Wow. Yeah, because if somebody bought the house, renovated, and they have a map of the property, this is where the house is. There's free parking between them and the bumpus now, so dogs can't just freely roam over the kid by a car. Then there's an inn, someplace they can stay outside. There's this Raleigh Inn. I don't know what that means. And then down from there, there's a Chris Museum, Story Museum, and a fire truck and a gift shop tour began. So I don't know what they all do, but you can go online, and it's a Christmas Story House museum out there for people. Anybody's interested in this, but they do have a lot of also novelty items and souvenirs and stuff related to it. And they have a pretty informative website. So if everybody's interested in that, do you guys have anything else to say about this? Because yeah.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
Ted?
Thank you, Ted. I was just going to say that I saw this website too and looked at the rooms and how bright and airy they were compared to the film itself, where everything's a little darker and more dimly lit. It was just an interesting contrast between the way the film lit the sets and the way they're portrayed here on this website. Just different eras, maybe. Ted?
I wonder about the snow. I mean, it's not a wonder. I mean, all through the movie, there's a lot of light snow that goes through, and it looks like real snow too. I mean, there's, but Kevin shakes his head.
Well, it's funny
Pretty
because
good about it. It's pretty good snow.
yeah, the winter they shot in both Toronto and Cleveland was surprisingly lacking in snow. So the producers had snow trucked in from ski resorts upwards of 100 miles away. So I would imagine up maybe New York somewhere, and had it trucked in and waiting. But when they couldn't get enough of the real snow, they made snow out of potato flakes and shredded vinyl. So they, Scott Farkas said in an interview for the 20th anniversary of the movie that when they're running down the alley, it was like sometimes it would bubble up because it was like they'd use soap flakes and potato flakes, anything that they could use, and it would create bubbles while they were running through it. So he said they thought it looked ridiculous. But again, you look at it on camera and it looks authentic. I mean, it does. The Christmas morning shot with all the trees covered and everything, it looks fantastic, but it's all fake. No snow. So.
And I just
Hollywood magic.
Another thing that I caught last night is the school is called the Warren G. Harding School. There are all these little touches here and there.
Yes. Oh, the level of period detail is amazing in this film for a low budget, $4 million movie. They went so far as even the clothes in Ralphie's drawers was period clothing, and his whole room. He said he and the kids on the film would just explore the sets in between shots because they could find old comic books and old toys and everything that was all period stuff was placed in there. So I thought they did a fantastic job all the way around.
And what about the parade? Was that a real parade? And was that a documentary kind of thing? I mean, or did they set that up?
Yeah, no, it was a real parade, and I'm fairly certain it was in Toronto, but I meant to go look at that again today. But I read before that it was, I believe, in Toronto, and yeah, it was a legit parade. They just set up, got some shots, And then obviously the reaction shots of the family, I don't think you can't see the family with the parade. So I think they shot those later, but I think they just got the parade shots randomly. So.
All right. So let's go on to talk about Santa a little bit here. Was the set for Visiting Santa based on a real store Santa setup?
Somebody's nightmare of one.
And who wants to go on that one? Rita?
I don't know the answer to that, but it seems that just the logistics and the liability that would never happen today, having people climb upstairs and then sliding down a slide. It seems very fanciful, but could be. I don't know. It is quite interesting, different than any Santa I've ever visited as a child.
Well,
but the idea that you would freeze and at that moment being in front of Santa, that makes sense to me as a
real.
a 9-year-old, that kind of thing. And then just the whole thing being kind of like surreal, that kind of strikes me too. Santa's not didn't this director make a movie called Black Christmas or something?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
So I mean, he's had his take on Christmas before,
Well, here's my take on that Santa scene, because remember, this is all filtered through the memories of a child as a child, right? So Ralphie's getting that up close, that point of view camera where Santa's face is right in the camera with his bulbous nose, and it looks rather gruff and mean, and the elves are whipping kids around. But then there's this shot at the end after Ralphie and his Brandy have gone and they're walking with their parents, and they shoot back to the Santa Claus who's up on the hill where he's sitting, but he's saying ho 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 and doing all the merry things a generous, kind Santa would be doing. And that to me is a sort of a generic shot from a different perspective than the kid's perspective. And so you got to look at that filtered through a kid's eye of how rotten Santa was up close, but from standing back where the parents would see, well, Santa's jovial and happy. So Randy, why are you screaming up there? Why are the kids crying? But the kids know, right, that Santa's a jerk and his elves are mean and they kick you around and they shove you in the seat. So I think that, again, that plays on that whole idea of everything being filtered through a kid's imagination and a kid's memories, and how different it appears to adults. So,
okay. Yeah. All right, we have a question from Tracy. Do we know what Ralphie's dad did for a living? I've asked that question. I've wondered that question, but one of you guys might have an answer to that one. No? Some office worker or something?
Yeah, he wore a suit and went to work. That's all we know. Kind of like Ward Cleaver.
Ward Cleaver. Yeah.
I like that. There was a line in there saying, well, the sun, the sky was getting purple, so it meant that Dad was coming home. That was a nice line, I thought. And I noticed Tracy also said that there was a real Warren G. Harding school. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. So that it wasn't just the school they had in the neighborhood, and it tells you when that was built. Then probably, yeah. Very good. All right, let's go on to another question here. What is the significance of the weird boy in line waiting to see Santa? And I thought I had a picture of this. Anybody want to bite on that one?
I'll start. I think it's just, Ralphie is so focused. This is his chance to get his wish in. So any kid ahead of him in line would have bothered him. It didn't really matter that this kid was portrayed in a particularly weird way. Any kid trying to talk to Ralphie and distract him from his singular task would have been annoying to him, I think.
Yeah.
Well,
spot on.
So the other thing with it too is that Ralphie, the actor, Peter, didn't like this boy. He just thought he was kind of weird. He just didn't like being in that scene. And if you watch the scene and his reaction, he's not even getting close to this kid. And he's standing around looking, and he's trying to avoid having any contact with this kid. So that was just really natural. It didn't have to be played up or anything else. It was just Ralphie, the real actor, just kind of like, oh. And that's a lot of the freshness that this director did to these people in the movie. Just going to make this up and let you see how you react. And that was a key. I've read about that as a key.
Yep.
Well, the kid also went berserk when he got on Santa's lap too. He seemed so self-confident. Well, I like Santa, and the other thing he liked something else, and all of a sudden he goes crazy. You know, that's what I love about this movie. Little weird kids that just pop out of nowhere. You know.
Right.
Okay, let's take another one here. This goes back to the compare and contrast. We talked already about this scene we had with let's see if I can do it this way. We have with the Santa. And the question is, compare and contrast the Higbee Santa experience with the same experience in Miracle on 34th Street. Now, why is this so different than everything else? Rita, why don't you start on this one?
Sure. Well, now that Kevin has, pointed out that this is all from the child's perspective, that puts a different taint on it. If you're looking at it as an adult and watching it, it seems much more harsh. The elves are highly choreographed in how they grab and turn and, land the kid on Santa's knee and then move him on. It's all very rushed and hectic. And we watched Miracle on 34th Street last week or so. And that's one of my favorite Christmas movies, the original. And Santa is so kind and gentle, and he speaks multiple languages. And you can imagine that a child would be less afraid to talk to him, the Santa in Miracle on 34th Street, than to talk to this department store Santa. And that's, again, looking at it from the outside as an adult. But if you're a kid walking up to this stranger, or Santa that you don't really know, you probably have a very different perspective on it.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it might be the difference between the Midwest and New York City too. I mean, this movie is so much about the Midwest and just the down homeness of everything, whereas Santa in 34th Street has to be something special and have something mystical about him. Christmas here is just the family doing their thing, and that's what I love about this movie. There's no mystical point to it. I mean, it's just the love of the mystery in the movie. It's not a mystery, but the mysticism is the family loving each other in spite of everything, and that just comes across so well. There's a lot of love in that family.
Well, let's just be frank. The difference between the two Santas is this is some cheap mall Santa, and in Miracle on 34th Street, it's freaking Kris Kringle, right? It's
the real
Santa.
deal.
This is just some joker with a red nose. That was Santa. And Santa's going to go to a department store in New York before he goes to some mall in Indiana. So that's the difference. Real Santa, fake Santa.
So what stores he go to, Macy's or Gimbel's?
Gimbel's.
Yeah.
Gimbel's.
You better get that one right, guys.
Spoken like a Wisconsinite, Rita.
Well, I remember growing up in the Detroit area and going to JL Hudson's, and they had a big deal like this. I don't remember a slide or anything, but you waited a long time, walked through, like kind of an elf too. They picture you walk through different scenes and everything. And then at the end, they also had a little store where you could get assigned to take money in, and there'd be an elf to help you pick out something for a gift from your mom and dad. And I remember that. And as I got older, my brother's 5 years younger than me, I had to still go through all of this with him to help him out and make sure he got the right things and everything else. But I always thought to me, that was one of the better experiences. And when you say something like Miracle on 34th Street, to me, that was the experience that I had. I don't remember even with the kids, my kids ever have anything like this, but I can just imagine it from a kid standpoint. All the ones that I see cry and want to get away, I imagine what was pictured in this movie is what they saw and felt, regardless of how nice it was. So, yeah.
For sure.
All right. Next one, so let's get back to talk about the director here. Dr. Bob Clark plays a small role in this film. A neighbor admiring Mr. Parker's major award. There's a picture, I'll show it. Did Clark appear in his other films as well?
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes.
Yes, he took a couple uncredited parts in his movies. I think actually in Porky's 2, he plays a Klansman in that one, but it's uncredited. And then he was also in Black Christmas. I think he's credited there. But so yeah, he'll pop up on occasion in his films, but always uncredited. I think this one he's actually credited as the Swede. Is how his character is described in the credits.
And then Black Christmas, like that. Also, they had several women in that. One was Margot Kidder, and the other one was, she's
Kim Cattrall.
Kim Cattrall.
I think it was Kim Cattrall. I could be wrong, but I know Kim Cattrall has been in a bunch of his movies, like a handful of his movies.
Right. And there's another lady, the one that did a lot of stuff on SNL, not SNL, the Canadian Second City show. I think it was called Second City. Anyways, I can't remember her name right. I shouldn't even mention it, but I was amazed at the people that were in this movie. Nobody ever heard about. Now, the other thing, too, is that, Kevin, you want to go on a little bit? We're talking about the director a little bit about Porky's. Now, I'm showing this just for a second here, and I'm going to get rid of this picture. Because what is Porky's, and why is it so important to this film? If nobody saw the introduction, this is, I think, an important aspect of how this movie came about. It's A Christmas Story.
Yeah, I mean, real quick, that Bob Clark was a journeyman director. He had 5 or 6 credits to his name, and he went and he got very little money from a Canadian company, but he got a whole bunch of Canadian tax credits. And he went and made Porky's, and it grossed almost $200 million. Spawned a sequel, which grossed over $100 million, and he used that to get in the door with MGM with his screenplay for A Christmas Story. So really, without Porky's success, MGM wouldn't have even given him the $4.5 million that they did to make A Christmas Story. So we've talked about this before in previous Beyond the Bays, where a lot of good movies happen and become great movies by chance or circumstance or a combination thereof. And a lot of things rely on other things. We talked about, specific editors or cinematographers that worked repeatedly with the same director to sort of elevate that director's work. Well, in this case, it was, essentially a raunchy B movie that struck a chord. And to this day, I remember the Monday morning after Porky's opened in third hour Latin class, and we didn't listen to the nun teach Latin. All we did was trade stories about, did you see this in Porky's? Did you see that in Porky's? And it was a cultural phenomenon while it was out there. And thankfully it was made, and thankfully because we get A Christmas Story out of the deal. So
yeah.
So,
but he never did much more than that, right? He never had much of a career, right, Bob Clark?
No, he made a few things into the 80s and 90s. He made Turk 182 with, I think, Gene Hackman maybe was in that. He made a film with Dan Aykroyd. He made Baby Geniuses in the early 2000s. And unfortunately, he made Baby Geniuses 2, which got him his second Razzie Award, because a year after A Christmas Story came out, he made Rhinestone, a dreadful sort of urban cowboy ripoff with Dolly Parton and Sly Stallone. You can't replicate Urban Cowboy with Sly Stallone, I'm sorry. But Bob Clark tried and failed miserably with Rhinestone.
He died in a car crash, right? Something like that?
He did, yeah. Sadly, he and his son were killed, hit by a drunk driver in 2007. So, yeah, very, very tragic end for Mr. Clark.
Let's go on to something a little more fun here. The Christmas dinner scene and the dinner scene at the Chinese restaurant is one of the freshest pieces of film ever made. How did it get the natural reactions?
Okay, I'm gonna sorry to jump in here again, but I just want to say I'm glad you started the scene where you did, because the part before that is somewhat offensive, but I think after that is marvelous. So I will let Rita or Ted talk about the marvelous part of it, and we'll just ignore the front part of it. How's that?
All right. So as the story goes, is that the family, the 4 members of the family, they weren't clued in as to how this scene was going to unfold. So when the owner of the Chinese restaurant comes out with the duck, it is quite the surprise to all the cast members. And once you know this little nugget, you can really appreciate how spontaneous their reactions are. And I think Darren McGavin's comment that the duck is smiling at him is totally spontaneous and so fitting. And then when the restaurateur pulls out the big knife and just chops it off, and you can see everybody just jump at the table, and Melinda Dillon just shrieks with laughter, and even the kids are like, oh my gosh. So the whole thing just unfolds very spontaneously, capturing really natural reactions from the family members, and it's all joyful. I mean, it's kind of a weird thing. This new food comes out at your table with its neck and head still on it. It gets chopped off in front of you, yet everyone's still all happy and laughing and shrieking with delight. And they're going to have a wonderful Christmas dinner.
And the other thing, too, is that the cast didn't know about the singing. That was kind of all hidden and everything else. That they arranged for the singers to say the words they did because they wanted to get some reaction from the family. And what I think is really good about this film, but also the scene, is that how all the actors play their roles so well. You see Dad trying to be stoic and everything else. Mom is kind of just reacting, okay? But she's also putting her arm around Randy and talking to the boys. And if you see earlier on in the scene, Ralphie's talking to Randy about what's going on and why this is happening. And also Mom is talking after the head's cut off, talking to Randy, this is okay, or whatever she's saying. But it's a very good scene because the beginning of the scene takes place where you see the bowling alley. It says bowling alley. It doesn't say alley, it just says bowling. And the concept is the name of the restaurant is Bowling, not bowling. It's not a bowling alley, it's bowling. And so you see the outside of the building and you see what's going on inside. The family's sitting down and all this stuff is happening. Next thing you know, we have this camera, which I believe is inside, although sometimes I wonder if it's actually shot from outside because the lighting and everything. But it's just a very fresh scene to catch natural reactions, staged and choreographed by the director, with the actors, all the actors there portraying in the roles that they have to play.
Oh,
that just makes it fresh.
I think it's all one shot.
Yeah, it's all one shot.
Right.
And they said, take, put it, print, at all. That's it.
You can call me what you will, but I just think it's very funny with the Chinese trying to sing a Christmas carol at all. The fact that they know it at all. But Walt Kelly, the guy who made Pogo, made a lot of jokes on Christmas carols and that kind of thing. So I just, again, it just fits in with the irreverence that goes through the here and there,
But I think also even with the what we now consider to be inappropriate and making fun of people's accents because they speak another language before English, I think it really is a touching moment because this is my interpretation of it, that the Chinese restaurant owners know that normally an American family would be staying at home at Christmas. And maybe they told them about the turkey being eaten by the neighbor dogs. So they're here at this restaurant at an unusual time. And the restaurant owner is trying to make them feel at home and make their Christmas dinner special for them. And singing Christmas carols is one of the things we do. And so it's really showing to me the hospitality of the restaurant owner to welcome these guests on this Christmas night to his restaurant. It's another one of those little touching moments.
Yeah, it's a real fresh scene. It's
and you have a Chinese restaurant in Hammond, Indiana, anyhow, is kind of interesting too.
and the thing is, then as their families coming together to eat and talk, Gene Shepherd comes on, talks, and you expect that to be the end, but it isn't. But that is just a very good coming together motion, and it's very touching. I like it, so that's why the question's in there. I want to make sure everybody saw that. All right. So everybody else, if you got questions, we've got about 10 minutes left here, but we still have a couple questions we can ask. But if not, please make some comments and ask in the comment section.
Kevin, what's the deal with Jack Nicholson in this movie?
Actually, he came across the script somehow and wanted to play the old man. and was very interested in doing it, but he wanted $2 million to do it, which against a $4.5 million budget wasn't going to fly. So talks broke down at that point. The sad part, and I mentioned this in the intro, was MGM at this point was in a sorry state of affairs. I think it was maybe the first or second time Kurt Kerkorian had owned the studio and was mainly using it to name casinos and sell off to license the name. So they were economizing where they could. So a Jack Nicholson and MGM movie at this time would have been nearly impossible. But he did want to play the old man. So what
He
could
would
have
have made
been?
it a different movie, I think.
He would have made it a different movie.
Yes,
Yes.
more powerful.
But we are almost 50 minutes into this, and we have not mentioned the core and the core thing of this movie. Well, we mentioned the lamp, but we didn't mention the Daisy Red Ryder 200 loading air rifle with a compass in the stock and something that tells time, which is Ralphie's dream Christmas entity. And I was watching a documentary with the cast, and they each went through their one Christmas gift that they had to have as a child, and they sort of as they were going through this movie, thinking of the Red Ryder BB gun as that white whale Christmas gift that they had, because on the set the prop master would not let any of the child actors touch the gun because it was a real gun. So only Peter Billingsley could touch it, and only when it was empty, and only while they were shooting. So the kids couldn't play with the gun. And actually, they had to make this gun specific for the film because it didn't exist, even though Bob Clark and Gene Shepard swore that it did exist, but they had the Daisy Company manufacture it for them. And he calls it, he describes it as a compass in the stock and something that tells time. And if anyone can guess what that something that tells time and what a kid would call something that tells time, is actually a sundial on the other side of the stock.
Yes,
a real
yes.
sundial on it. And that's what Ralphie thought, something that tells time. And it was the sundial that was on the Red Ryder BB gun. So, but that's the coolest thing. Everybody wanted a gun when I was a kid.
I had an experience like the Ovaltine thing of sending away for something, box tops and things like that. And I thought I was going to get this really wonderful gizmo that had old time and had a compass in it, and it turned out to be this little 6-inch plastic. Boy, was I had that same kind of incredible disappointment of expecting this wonderful thing to come in the mail, and it was just a piece of junk. And I can tell what a ripoff it was,
That's another beautiful family moment, because what is Dad interested in? He does his puzzle every day to win his $50,000 chance at $50,000. He sends away for contests to win a great prize or a great award or whatever he calls what becomes the leg lamp. But the old man is no different than Ralphie, and Ralphie is no different than the old man, right? It's another one of those things where that's what builds a family, are these things, these oddities that are passed down. Yes, my favorite improv in the whole film takes place just before this, where Ralphie running his leg up and down the mom. That was natural because Clark wouldn't let the kid actors see the leg lamp until they pulled it out of the box. And then that's Ralphie's natural thing, because you see him, he's very nonchalantly doing it, but very focused, but sort of not aware what he's doing as he rubs his hand up and down the leg. And he does it again in another scene too. It's absolutely fantastic. So pre-adolescent.
And a lot of people say, where does this idea come from? They came up as the script from this knee-high commercial, this knee-high ad that Gene Shepard had seen as a kid. And this is a knee-high ad, knee-high, the drink, whatever. But it's also, this drink is knee-high. So this lamp came as a result of this. And I just think it's really good. And as you say, there's all this human emotion and humanness to it. You can see in the top corner on the one side, you see Dad just like, oh my gosh, and the mom's like, oh my God, this can't be what he's doing there. And then the little boys are going like, oh, what is this? Okay, and then also mom's looking outside saying, we got the lamp, and and then there's again the bottom picture too with the mom looking up and the boys looking up, and it is that touch of humanness. The leg lamp, as much as screwy as it seemed, it brought a lot out of each character. And I think, Kevin, you make a good point, is the son and the father are alike in so many ways here, like related to it, Ted, you were talking about with the contest. And then also with the leg lamp, there's this fascination with it. Why could this be? And I think the leg lamp has to stay in history because this is a really good scene. It ties another piece that ties their humanness to the movie that everybody can relate to.
The mother got rid of it too. I mean, it was done so. No, she never complained verbally. I mean, she never said anything orally that this was a terrible thing. She just got rid of it in her own little way.
Yes.
She's an amazing character. I mean,
Yes.
the acting that she does in this movie is just great.
Yeah. And she was just, all the actors just pulled out and did a lot in this film. And we've got time for one, maybe then in the second and the last question. Maybe we got time for one last, anything you guys want to comment on or something we may do here. Otherwise, I know people always ask whatever happened to the actors in this film and from here on out. And let's just start with, I moved that to wrong here. Let's start with looking at Ralphie, because people, I don't know if people know this or not, is that Ralphie went on to become a producer and stayed in movies for a while. He also was an elf, one of the rare actors to be in two famous classic cult type of Christmas movies. And he was in Elf. He played the guy with the beard. I don't remember his name is, but he's kind of the boss and I have to give rules there. But he went on, he also was played in, he joined up with Jon Favreau and did producing with him and some acting and bit roles. The one with the glasses on, older, he plays a scientist and a bit part in the movie. But what he started out with, instead of Ovaltine, he started with Hershey syrup. And that's what really made him big, because he did all these cutesy type of commercials for him, print ads. And so that's Peter Billingsley. He's still active, and there's still a lot going on with him.
He actually executive produced Iron Man.
Man.
Yeah. So you mentioned his friendship with Vince Vaughn and Jon Favreau. So he's produced a bunch of their films, like Four Christmases, I think is a Vince Vaughn film, and Made was another film that they made. So he's working behind the camera. But I think the wonderful thing about Peter Billingsley is he's one of the rare ex-child actors who isn't essentially ashamed of what he's known for as a child, and he embraces people recognizing him as Ralphie and wanting to regale him with their knowledge of the film and stuff. And he says, obviously what I did as a 12-year-old kid affected these people enough that they care about this movie, and he embraces it, and that's not right. in a cheap way, but just as a natural way, that this is, people love what I did when I was a kid, and I'm happy that I did it. So
and then the gang of boys too, they all had different stories and what they went on, and they all gave really good performances, even just running up and down the alley. Okay, but they gave memorable performances, and some of them went on, did some more acting. Some, I think one gentleman was his only time he did any real acting, but it's good, and they stay together, and they get together for reunions, and they do different things, and I hear that they still get together because this film has had such an impact on people. But it's nice that they've been very good about staying together as a group and also representing the story very well. There's a comment here about the leg lamp from Marta. The leg lamp inspired my husband to create his own from an orthopedic leg cast he just had removed. I love this. He inserted a plastic cast of his foot and topped all with a gaudy silk and crystal drop lampshade. Well, you could go, just tell your husband you can go out and buy one. But that's great, Marta. Thank you. And Marta also then asked the question, who was the dog actor?
The Bumpus's dog wrangler.
Yeah.
Who wrangled all those dogs. I don't know. But I think there was he identifies, Ralphie does, of 573 dogs in the Bumpus household. It didn't seem like there was that many, but I'm sure it did. Lear, if I can throw this out, because I think this in my mind sort of crystallizes everything. I'll do it real quick. That Gene Shepherd, his view on life, and it's just as those Bumpus dogs come in. The old man's reading his newspaper. Ralphie's just dodged a bullet with the gun issue, literally speaking, and old Ralphie says, life is like that. Sometimes at the height of our revelries, when your joy is at its zenith, when all is right in the world, the most unthinkable disaster descends upon us. And I think that it takes away the potential sentimentality of that family Christmas thing, but it really sums up Gene Shepherd's view on life. It's like, yeah, just, you can be sailing along, but it could all come crashing down at any minute. And I think that's what lifts this movie up and from a schmaltzy sentimental thing. It takes the humor in life and spins it in a very sweet and charming way.
It's not one storyline that needs it's not one storyline that needs to be concluded. It's all the stories of everybody as it goes through these days and what their actions. And if we see more movies like this, it'd be great. So we've run out of time, but let's do one last question, then we'll wrap up here. But let's say 30 seconds or less. I want everybody in the audience to think about that. Put it in your comments if you come up and answer. Last question is, let me get the question up. What is your memorable Christmas experience from childhood that is similar to the movie?
Well, for me, it was going downtown and seeing the going in the windows. I mean, there was a whole bunch of things, but that's the one I can point to.
Rita?
Well, at our house, we open Christmas presents on Christmas Eve. And just like Ralphie's family, the pile of presents under the tree always seemed way more than we ever expected. And then somehow our parents and Santa came through and provided plenty for the event.
How about you, Kevin?
Well, I had an aunt who would get us, my brothers and I, a sweater every year in the same shaped box every year. But every year we hoped that it was something different than a sweater. And we would shake them and try and open them surreptitiously. But it was always a sweater. And as Ralphie and his brother throw the socks, that's, and they were lovely sweaters, but,
Yeah, I can remember a lot of things, but I was remembering that one about the aunts and uncles always giving you stuff, especially the ones that lived out of, they no longer lived there. They didn't know I was a little boy anymore. I didn't need these things. Okay. They thought I was still little. And we'd get these things in the clothes and everything else. I think those wrap up. And we all have these different memories. So please think about that, everybody. And thank you very much for being here today. Let's go and take a look at what I'd like to do is ask you is if you could subscribe to the Bay Theater's YouTube channel. When you go out to our website, you can see it. It's called, not to the website, to the YouTube channel. You go to YouTube and type in a query for the Bay Theater, and please subscribe to it. Once we get enough numbers, enough people subscribing to this, we can do more with the YouTube channel, especially get a special name for it so we don't have to just tell people go look for it. We can actually direct you to it more directly and be able to find it. But if you go to YouTube, log into YouTube, type the Bay Theater, and you should be able to come up, see our logo, and click on it, and please subscribe. And you'll get updates if you check the little bell or allow notifications for this YouTube channel to come on. If you subscribe to, you'll see when we post new updates and give you information about when we're doing things. So thank you very much. And we'd like to say that we're going to be back here again in 2 weeks. And we're going to be discussing another Christmas film. It's a Wonderful Life. I think almost everybody in the world has seen this one. And we're going to have a lot of discussion on this. So we welcome you to come back, same time, but 2 weeks on December 22nd. In between then, be safe, be healthy, and enjoy the movies you see. And please go and be safe. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Adios.
Have a good time. Adios.